a lot of reports out there, some rumors, some little things trickling out of camp as they get set to take on Trinidad and Tobago, that the captain, at least for this game, gentlemen, who will be wearing the armband, is Stefan Eustaquio. Are you surprised by this news, Ollie?
Not surprised, no, and congratulations to Stefan. That is the case. I think he's obviously a deserving player to take the armband. It's a big honor, and I know it will mean a lot to him. So that I'm pleased to see him get it. I think with Eustaquio, you know what you're going to get, right? Like, he's 8 out of 10 or better every game. He's totally reliable. And I think for a lot of people, that will make him the easy choice to not just be Canada captain for this game, but potentially be Canada captain permanently as well. He's got clear leadership qualities. And he's also a great story as a dual national, as someone who had the opportunity to play for a different country but chose Canada. And his career has gone from strength to strength since then. And he's really succeeded in the Canada jersey as well as in his club career. Like I said a few days ago on the show when we discussed this, I do think that Alphonso Davies should be the front runner for this job. That's not taking anything away from Eustaquio and the job I'm sure he'll do. I just think there's, something with Davies where the player he is, what he symbolizes for this team, what he's capable of being for this team. I would love to see him take on the captain's armbands. Whether we see a different choice in the long term or whatever the case may be, I don't know. I just think Alphonso Davies is the one for me with that armband who has the potential to go to another level. And that's something that I thought could be interesting in terms of the choice they make here. I think there's been a little bit with Davies of, let's protect him, let's shield him, let's focus on his football. I would personally prefer to see, let's challenge Alphonso Davies, let's take him out of his comfort zone a little bit and try and provoke some growth in his game. And as a leader of this Canadian team as well. And it may come down to what Davies wants himself. He doesn't want to be the captain. But that was where I thought there was an interesting decision to be made here. But certainly I've got no complaints about the idea of Stefan Eustaquio wearing the armband.
Yeah, I think it's worth prefacing the internal discussions that may or may not have happened. Like, we don't know if this was, made available to Alfonso. We don't know if this is something that he wanted or if this was simply Mauro Biello just walking in saying, I've chosen Stefan Eustaquio for this game, and that's it. To your point, we also don't know if this is going to be the case moving forward. Mauro Biello is still an interim coach. If he remains, then it's worth a discussion. If he keeps Eustaquio, if there's a new coach who comes on board, maybe he ends up choosing somebody else. But what are you feeling about this, Jordo, with at least for this game in particular, Biello having that faith in Eustaquio to be his leader on the pitch?
Andy, I like to go down memory lane, but just humor me. This won't take too long. I had a coach one time who said to me that I was a professional before I got paid to play. And it really stuck out to me because he was basically telling me that before he got money, he acted like a professional. He slept like a professional. He did things like a professional. This was when I was really young. It really stood out to me. I said, before you actually get dubbed something, you need to be that something. Alphonso Davies, without question, is the most talented player that we've seen wear a Canadian jersey for the men, for sure. His ceiling is still up there. Like, he hasn't even touched it yet. He's still so young. But I think in terms of being a leader and you're wearing the captain armband, you have to be a captain before you get an armband. If this is making any sense at all, just bear with me. I think for Alphonso Davies, it's more working on the leadership within the locker room every time he plays. I'm not questioning that he doesn't love playing for Canada. I'm basically challenging him to go further with leading a squad that that you're one of the best on. And I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot being a 20-something-year-old and you're going into camp all the time and all eyes on you. And whether you do a good thing or you do a bad thing, you're always being judged. But I want to see him be more of a leader before he even gets a captain armband. Because I think it's still inevitable that 2026 he's wearing that armband. But you just want to see a bit more out of him, seeing like this is going to be my time. And like I said a few shows back, if he went to Biello and said, look, I want to be this guy, I'm sure that any coach, even Biello, would be like, you know what, this is a guy that I'd want to be a captain. But I think it needs to come from Davies first.
Wheels?
First off, I generally don't get drawn into these captain conversations like this, what it means, because I think that oftentimes it's done Leadership comes through many different players within the team, but I do think that this is notable for a couple different reasons. Like Ollie said, Eustaquio, I think that we all think very highly of him. They clearly do internally as well. A critically important player for the Canadian men's national team. When we get down to how Gareth Wheeler feels about it, that doesn't matter as much as how Alphonso Davies feels about it. And oftentimes, the captain of countries, and just look at recent World Cups or major competitions, it is the team's best player. It is Gareth Bale. It is Lionel Messi. It is Cristiano Ronaldo. It is Kylian Mbappe. These types of players end up being the captain of the team. And Jordan can speak to this, and so can I. Sometimes over the course of my playing career, the captain was the best player on the team. Other times, it was that ingrained, entrenched, experienced leader that was just the player that everyone turned to. And what's interesting is that at a time of great transition, where Mauro Biello has come out and said that basically new leaders need to emerge, they need space in order to do that, that Alphonso Davies is not the player who reportedly is going to be named as being captain. Now, if Alphonso Davies doesn't want to be captain right now, then that's one thing. But I have a hard time believing that Davies wouldn't want to be the captain heading into a home World Cup and all the prominence that comes along with it, all the possibility, all the responsibility as well. I mean, it's a big moment. Davies was the player who stood up in front of the world when Canada was announced as World Cup host. He was a player who stepped up in the World Cup and wanted to take that penalty. I know he missed, but then he ended up scoring the first goal at a World Cup for the Canadian men's national team. So it's a little bit of a tricky one for me. Maybe this just signifies just how temporary this game actually is. That for this one game and this one game only, Eustaquio is the best option. But if once a new manager is named, perhaps Davies will be that player. Again, like Davey, I listed a bunch of players off. Generally, those are some significant soccer nations. Davies is still a big fish in a smallish pond, like just in terms of by comparison in international football. So that's why it has to come as a little bit of a surprise. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I just wonder how Davies and the people around him feel about that.
And you're right. I think this is a storyline that'll continue until a coach is made permanent, which is why, again, Mauro Biello is the interim coach. Kevin Blue, the new general secretary, has made it perfectly clear that Mauro Biello is in the running to be the new head coach. But until there's a permanent cementing of a full-time manager, it doesn't feel like even the captaincy is completely cemented. Having said that, I have zero issues with Stefan Eustaquio wearing this armband. I think many of us, know what he's about as a player, know what he's about as a person. But you're right. All those points that you also made about best player moving forward, home World Cup, Alphonso Davies, without doubt, is still the face of this team. And he'll be the face on Saturday as they take to the pitch against Trinidad and Tobago, a game that we have been talking about a lot because it's a huge one. And now we're just in the final stretch here. It'll be on our network, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. This is a qualification to Copa America, which, again, as we know, with the Canadians being part of the host nations for 2026 World Cup, don't have to go through qualifiers. So this is massive to get this kind of competition and this kind of experience under their belt. Let's do a little bit of predicting here. Jordo, do you think, or which is more likely, I guess is what I should say, that Canada routes Trinidad and Tobago, routes them later, or the Soca Warriors are going to keep this one close? I feel like both those questions kind of indicate Canada's winning. Maybe you have something completely different, but is it a big win or is it a tight win?
First, we need to address the elephant in the room. Whatever you had for breakfast, I want it.
Dude, it's my greens.
I'll send you my address because they were shakes. I was like, where's the Latino? Like, there were shakes. I was like, yeah.
In moderation.
All that was happening.
In moderation.
And it was a simple question. To answer it though, Andy Pachillo, I think obviously it depends on the day, but if I have to go and pick, I'm saying Canada should win this game and win it comfortably. Like, yes, I think this is a Trinidad and Tobago team. They've had some upsets in the past in terms of beating the U.S. and whatnot. And they're a spirited team. They're a team that's going to buckle down and defend well and try to counter and all these things to frustrate the Canadians. But I just look at the talent on this squad. Eustaquio in the midfield, Laren, David, Davies, Buchanan. I'm like thinking about this squad. I'm like, Kone running free. Look at him. like emerging. I look at these guys, I'm like, look, this should be comfortable if they go out and be humble and they go about their business the right way. And I think that they can do. I'm looking at a 4-0 win, even though the Soka Warriors are spirited. This should be one of those 2-0 at half, 3-0 maybe, and just coasting. Truthfully, there shouldn't be a fight.
Ollie?
Well, I have to say, a little bit of a disrespectful question from Andy Petrillo there. Huge win or tight win? Not even contemplating the possibility of a
I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that.
I don't know. Sounded like you've written them off already. However, that being said, I do tend to agree with Jordan. I expect Canada to dominate this game. I expect Alphonso Davies, Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, these guys are top-level players. To have a bit too much for this Trinidad team, as much as they are solid and organized and have provided some resistance to some teams in this region. In recent matches, it's just a case of does Canada take their chances? I think you can look back at that Jamaica game at the end of last year and say Canada should have been better than 1-0 up at halftime, and they weren't, and we all know how that ended. So that is maybe the question, but I do think Canada has too much firepower to not have plenty of opportunity in front of goal.
They do. However, there are two issues that are problematic for me heading into this. Well, three issues. We'll add a third one in, because the third one that I want to throw in there is mentality. Where's the mindset at? There's been some revealing statements being made. Josh Cloak's piece in The Athletic, even Mauro Biello, about players being distracted, the lack of focus. Now you get rid of all the experience in the team, not a player over 30. Is this team mentally prepared to go into a game where it's essentially do or die to face the world champions, Argentina, at Copa America? The second problem, we saw Trinidad and Tobago in the first game that they played against the U.S. They ended up losing 3-0, but all three goals came beyond the 80th minute, and Trinidad and Tobago had a player sent off in the 37th minute. They packed it in. They're very well organized. They put a lot of hard work and players in the middle of the park, and they force you to break them down. What is this Canadian men's national team strength? What has it been for years? Playing on the counterattack, playing on pace, trying to systematically break down teams has been far more difficult for them to do. They can do it, absolutely, but that hasn't been their bread and butter. It's when it's a wide open game where they really, really thrive. And the third issue is defensively, they've been nowhere near good enough in recent games. They're conceding a lot of goals. I don't think they've had a clean sheet since Guatemala in the Gold Cup, and that was kind of a one-off. I know it's a different team. A lot of different players have come in, but the defensive work, there's been question marks. And who actually steps in for players like Vitoria and Borjan? Is it a slam dunk that they're more organized, that they're better off? We're just not sure what that's going to look like. And clearly Trinidad and Tobago are going to try to strike on the counter. They are vastly improved from where they were a year ago. And they're a team that just plays within themselves. So those would be my three issues. I do think Canada will win this game, but more so like a 2-1, 3-1 scenario makes a whole lot of sense for me, but I don't think it's going to be completely straightforward. It might be, Andy, in terms of possession and the way that game's playing out, but the ability to keep it close. And if Trinidad can provide some difficult moments for Canada, we'll see how much of a pain in the you-know-what they'll actually be.
Well, and again, it's also just recency bias too. We all said, like, yes, on paper, you look at this and it should be no doubt, right? Like you're looking at it going, okay, Canada should beat Trinidad and Tobago. But then again, we look at what happened against Jamaica, where we also very much felt the same. They end up losing that home and away, hence why we're here in this Trinidad and Tobago game. And I don't know what to expect from TNT. To your point, they've beaten the Americans, but then they've also lost royally to the Americans. But we also know they're the reason why the Americans didn't qualify for the 2018 World Cup when they beat them. So I guess that's another thing to contradict my own question about how big or small the win will be for Canada. I guess I just don't know what kind of Trinidad and Tobago team will show up. And I think that could still be very scary on the weekend.
Do we know what kind of Canada team's going to show up?
A lot of distractions.
We know the players in Canada's team should be by far good enough, but how will the team collectively play together in this one? That's the question.
I think the big difference, though, is that even if Canada isn't totally on it, and I hope they are, I don't think there's players in the Trinidad team like there is in the Jamaica team that are going to punish them for falling asleep for a moment, for making a mistake. Like it's a different level of player when you're talking about Leon Bailey and Bobby Reeds and the guys that Damari Gray that were playing for Jamaica in that match. Like, I just don't think Trinidad quite have that quality to punish Canada, even if Canada's not 10 out of 10.
Agreed. Crazier things happen, just as Andy in her beloved Italy not qualified for competition.
What?
Wow.
It's always
Don't
great
make
to
me
remind
get my
everyone.
teddy
Whoa.
bear and knock my whole shelf
Well
over
said.
again.
I went there.
Sip it. Here.